My name's MaryLeah, and we're just going to do a really, I'm thinking of this as a really cheerful project that can be used with a variety of materials. If you don't have watercolors and all you have are some colored pencils, you could certainly do it that way. And it's just sort of thinking about relaxing a little bit and enjoying springtime and the idea that spring is coming really soon. So we're excited about that. So the materials that you'll need a pencil and an eraser, possibly. And you'll need, if you're going to work with watercolors, then you're going to need some pigments. Now, if I put this here.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have the tubed colors, you can just use a tin like this that has paints right there for you. That would work really, really well. And I'm using a round brush. So any kind of round brush that you have, not a tiny little baby one, but this is about a 10, number 10. And then I also have a smaller one that is like it's a 9. Or it could be a 6. Actually. It's probably
upside down.
Yeah, it's upside down. So you can use those, but I would stay away from a flat brush for this project and just use a round. That will work really well. So, and you'll need some watercolor paints, yellow, if you have some yellow would be great, some green, a little blue, perhaps alizarin crimson's a good color to have, or some permanent rose, something like that. And you can mix your colors together for this project, and that's why it's fun, because it really lends itself to mixing the variety of colors that you might have at home in your palette. Okay, so let's get started. What I'm using is Arches 140 weight paper. You could use any watercolor paper that you have at home, and the size can be, you know, whatever size you have as well. I think this is about 11 by 14-ish. 8 by 10 is great, or if you just have a small little piece of paper, that will work too. So let's get started. What I'm going to do now, what this project is, I'm going to show you here. I think this would work. Just a really fun floral wreath. And we're going to start out by doing a bit of drawing. Now, you don't have to draw to make this. You can also just do it quite freehand. But I'm going to draw lightly in areas, just so I have a place to work from, so I know what I'm doing and where I'm going with this. Usually with watercolor, we're working light to dark. I'm mixing my greens because oftentimes we need to put a bit of yellow with our green that we have to get a nice little spring green. And then you can choose the colors that you want for the flowers. That's going to be totally up to you. So, okay, so that's where we're headed with this. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a circle on my watercolor paper. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but if you would like to trace a plate or something like that, that would work. And I'm just going to kind of freehand make a circle shape here for my wreath. Okay. I've drawn a circle. There's some room around the edges of the circle so that there's space to do stuff outside of the circle. Okay? All right. So once we get that done, we're going to start adding some leaves first. And I'm going to very lightly draw some leaf shapes. If drawing isn't your favorite thing to do, that's okay. You can just think about the shapes that would make a flower and, excuse me, a leaf. And I'm just drawing a leaf shape here. And it's just two curves, really, curved lines that are put together. Some ideas for leaves and where they can go and the different shapes that you might make. Oops, that's upside down. To make them. Some of the leaves might be small and some of the leaves might be a little bit bigger. As you can see, this one, you can probably see where I put these leaves here along the edges, and I'm leaving room for the flower shapes that are going to get in here down the road. So that's where I would start, and I'm going to do that on mine. I'm going to draw some different leaf shapes around here. So we're working fairly lightly so that you can erase. So try and change the size of your leaves so that there's some that are large and some that are perhaps a bit smaller. And then some of them are going to come inside the circle that you've drawn, and some would go on the outside, just to give it, you know, some fullness and to make it more interesting. Okay, so now we're thinking about getting these leaves painted. And generally with watercolor, we're working light to dark. We can always get darker, and we can increase our value. In other words, get darker a bit as we go along. So
it's hard to get lighter.
Yeah, it's hard to get lighter with it. So I'm using my round brush, my number 2. Well, it's not a number 2 brush, it's a 10. Excuse me. And I've got some water, and I've got some tissue here, so in case I need it for drawing my brush. And I'm thinking about yellow, and I'm thinking about green. So depending on the green that you have in your palette, you might want to add a bit of yellow to it so that it's a more spring green. If you have Viridian, which is a color that a lot of people, I recommend that color, add some yellow to it so that you get a spring green. I have lemon yellow, and I have, I don't remember, I think this is Hooker's green. I know it's hard for you to see these colors, but so,
I think it is.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's pretty dark.
Yeah, so I'm mixing a bit of yellow in with my, Hooker's green. I don't want it to be too dark to start with. I want to have it pretty light. And I'd like you to try and mix a few different greens. That one is Viridian, pretty sure. And see if you can get a couple different greens happening so that they're not all the same. So now we can work a number of ways with these. You could actually just do this completely freehand, and that would work too. In other words, you don't have to draw these first, but we did draw them. So I'm going to get a little bit of water inside my leaf. So I'm getting it wet a little bit, and I'm gonna maybe get this clump here a bit damp.
So you do one clump at a time?
One clump at a time, and I've got some clean water here that I'm using. And then I can just take the green that I've mixed up, and just after the water has seeped into the fibers of the paper, then I can just start maybe at the base of the leaf to add some color to it. And I can just leave some areas that I didn't paint with the green so that they'll just be kind of lighter in value. I can also pull some color up. I know it's a bit hard to see probably, but I pulled some color up, and I've got a nice little leaf there. And then I can get darker if I want to, kind of at the base of it where it's connecting to the wreath. I painted one of my little leaves, and I'm really going to just continue on painting these leaves, but keep in mind that getting the surface wet before you add your color is going to give you the really nice results. So dampen it first. It might have dried already, so I'm going to get it a little bit more wet, and then I can go in and add my color. Now, all your leaves don't have to be the same color. You can change it up a little and add some more as you're going along. So I'm going to go and I'm going to work on that, adding colors into the leaf shapes first, and then we're going to let that dry a bit. It's always nice to leave a little bit of white inside the leaf shapes that you've done, and it gives it a nice little sparkle when you do that. Now I can go back later as I'm working along here and add some more darks to this. So even while it's wet, I can add more darks. When these leaves get completely dry, you can paint some more leaves on top of them, which is kind of fun to do, but it would need to be dry before you do that, because otherwise you'll start pulling up your paint. So I'm going to wait before I add the vine that goes around that. I'm going to, around the wreath, I'm going to do that a bit later because I'm going to be adding my flowers here. And I want the vine to be around it and be basically under it. So if your water is a bit green, which it probably is, you might want to get some fresh water. All right, well, I think the next part we'll do is just to add a few, if you want to. You don't have to, certainly, but add a few little berries. And I'm doing some little yellow ones, and then I'm going to do some that are maybe orange, or even some little red berries. So that's very, very simple to paint. These are just little circles that are a bit darker or have a little more color at the base of them. So it's kind of fun to add these just for fun. So really what we're doing is just drawing with your brush and kind of seeing where things lead you. And you don't even have to color the whole thing in. You can just do some little curvy lines and then soften the inside a little bit with your brush. So I'm doing some yellow ones. I'm probably going to think about some that are pink. And while I have my yellow and my water is clean, I can go back if I want to into these leaves and add some more color as I'm going along if I feel that they need a little more warmth. You don't always have to paint everything in completely solid. You can just leave some white happening. We're leaving what we call paper white. We're just leaving it show through. So I didn't color in this whole little berry or whatever this is, little bud of some sort. Could be a little bud. I just left some white parts. And you could always grab another yellow if you have another yellow, or mix a little bit of your pink in there with it and add some definition that way. I'm going to go in now to a bit of the alizarin crimson. Excuse me, if you don't have that color, you could use rose, permanent rose. That would work too. And I'm going to do some little red berries along here too. So I'm just kind of putting these wherever I feel like it. That's the fun thing about this little project, is it's growing. It's a wreath, or think of it as a bouquet that's just growing as I continue to paint it. And if you get some color where you don't want it to go, then you can just take your tissue and go boom and get rid of it. So we want to make sure that this is all dry before I proceed to the next part of doing the leaves, excuse me, the flowers. So just want to make sure that it's dry so that I don't smear things as I'm going along here. I thought that it would be fun to add some sort of a little, later if you have time and you want to, you could draw a little dragonfly in the center.
Well, that'd be fun, yeah.
Yeah, or a little butterfly, or maybe a bird. That would be kind of fun. Or maybe just even a little bird's nest down at the bottom would be fun. The way that I did mine was very, very simple. These little flowers, and we're going to do it this way, but you can get pretty fancy with the flowers that you choose to add here. And I'm going to show you how I did these. But you could choose your colors that you want for the flowers. I just did several different colors, and I'm thinking springtime. And again, you can use whatever colors that you have and whatever colors you would like to do. These don't all have to be the same size. Mine are sort of the same size, but you could make a big one, maybe down at the base of the wreath or anywhere. And then again, here's some ideas that I have here that show some different ideas for flowers that you could add. And it's just fun to experiment. So again, the ones that I'm going to do with you today are just relatively simple, I would say. I'm getting a fresh sheet of paper so that you can see me make these little, I don't know what they are, maybe like little posies or something like that. There are a couple different ways you can do it, and there's probably lots of ways you can do it. But one of the ways is to just think about, again, where you're going to be placing these. And this is just a little one that I'm going to do off on another sheet of paper. I'm thinking circles, and I'm thinking curves that are different sizes. So I can dampen my paper first and just paint with clean water and create some of the shapes that I'm thinking about. And obviously you can't see that. So I'm going to...
Well, it makes it easier because if you make a mistake, it's with water. You don't like it,
exactly.
Dry it and go back and make a different shape.
That's right. So I'm going to just take, I've got some blue because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to kind of go back where I just was with the water, and I'm going to make some marks that are curved. You see what I'm doing here? And then maybe there's one outside, and then maybe there's one inside. Okay, so that's all I'm doing. And then I'm taking clean water and I'm going to soften these edges and bring them inside a bit. So this is a really very simple way to make some pretty cute little flowers. So that's what I just did. Now, I could also just create a circle shape with my clean water. That would work too. It's damp, and that way I know that these are going to blend and move. The color's going to move. And I'm going to put a little bit of purple in with my blue. Or if you don't have purple, then grab your
red.
Yep, your red or your alizarin, and you'll get a nice purple. So this is damp, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm not going to color it all in like a circle, like a solid circle, but I'm just going to make some marks with my brush that are curved. Okay, and that's what I just did here. Now, I could grab another color and add that in as well. So, but I'm just thinking of this motion of curved lines to create these little flowers. That one's kind of messy. So you could experiment a little bit before you put these on your wreath. Now I'm going to show you, if you want to, I'm going to show you what happens if I just do it dry. And this surface here is dry. And what's going to happen, I've got some blue loaded up on my brush, and I'm going to do the same thing. You can see that the pigment is stronger because there's no water with it. And you can see the difference. I'm going to soften now the inside edges with the clean water. This is probably not the best way to do it because you get some really hard edges. However, some people like that, working that way, and that's totally cool. So you can work however you want to, and I'm adding another color in here as I go along to change it up a little bit. This one kind of got lost on me, didn't it? It sort of, I don't know if you can see that, but it's not as clear as these others. So I can go back in, and it's still a little bit too wet. So I might want to wait now for this to dry before I do more to that one. So I think my favorite is this one, the first one that I did, but okay. So another idea for flowers, if you don't want to have them all the same, is just to create some little daisy-like shapes. And the round brush really lends itself to this, so just using the brush to create some little petals is always a nice thing to do. So I'm just creating some petals with my round brush. That's kind of like a little star flower. So whatever works for you, whatever you like, you can just do it as you're going along. Okay. Another fun thing to do, and I'm going back to green, but we'll do this later, but I'm just kind of going ahead a little, is to create some things that are like this, that are little stems, and then adding a little color on the edges of them. Yeah, I put a bit of water down first, just like I did on my big sheet, and then I've left a lot of white. Maybe I could put that up. Oh, I was putting it onto the screen.
Yeah.
And you're just sort of drawing with your brush and bringing these shapes out to create a little flower.
What happens if your flower kind of overgrows? Keep going.
It would just take over the whole thing.
It would,
It
wouldn't it?
would be like, yeah, that'd be okay.
Yeah. Some of these that you can see in your sample get bigger as they get more.
Yeah, they do. They get bigger as they grow.
Yeah.
And you start in the center and then grow it. That's another way to do it. I'm just growing it from the center out. So you can put your flowers along here pretty much anywhere you want to go. Nice if you've done, you know, a pink flower to repeat another pink flower a couple times so that you have some variety happening. It's also nice if you want to have some different sized flowers. I think we mentioned that before. They don't all have to be the same size, nor do they need to all be the same shape. So you could have some little daisies or some tulips, which probably wouldn't make too much sense to put a tulip in, but you could do it if you wanted. You could.
I see that you're going in with the red into some of your blue flowers for the center to kind of.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. So like Larry just said, I've kind of gone in to get some dark happening and a little different color happening in the center of some of these flowers, but I want to avoid getting them painted in a solid way. I want to leave some white. Just
Very airy.
Better.
It
Yeah.
seems very airy.
Yeah, that's. I like that one right there. And you may find that you have a little berry in the center that you've made, and that's cool. So I'm going to go back and make it a little bit, stand out a little more, that little yellow. When you work with a damp surface and add the pigment to it, it's creating value. In other words, lights and darks just on its own. You don't have to do too much. It's kind of nice that way. So I'm going in with a little bit, a lighter blue here, just to give this a little more definition.
Yeah.
So this flower here was sort of getting away from me, so I got a little more dark inside there. You can always go back and add the darks where they need to be. So while my flowers are drying, I'm going back into my leaves, and some of them they're pretty much dry, so I can go back in and add some line work with my brush, and I'm really just drawing some veins into these leaves. And you don't have to do them all, just do some of them if you want to.
It looks like you're barely touching the tip of your brush.
Very, very lightly. I'm just really using my arm more to make these marks. So that's why this is fun, because it's so kind of loose and just fun to make these little marks with your brush. Because these leaves are dry now, I can do some berries on top of these because they're dry, so I know that it's not going to run. And you can see that as I continue here and get a bit darker, it creates a bit of depth. So I've got some lights and darks. I really don't see the pencil marks that I made. And if that's something that you're thinking about, you can always, once it's completely dry, you can erase them.
They erase when it's completely dry?
Yeah, it's got to be completely dry before you erase.
Okay.
I don't usually worry about my pencil marks.
No,
so
I don't either.
I just leave them. So again, I'm going in with not so much water, more paint here, and giving some darks kind of at the base of some of these leaves, just to, again, give it a little bit more depth where I want them to go. And you'll notice too, and I'm just to remember that this paint is going to dry lighter. So as it dries, you might think, oh, I need to add some more colors because it's getting, you know, it's pale. It dries lighter than when you apply the paint, right? Whereas acrylic doesn't that
It's the opposite.
it gets darker
It's darker
when it dries. So I'm putting a little stronger yellow in here.
And then oil dries the color that you're painting.
Okay,
So all three act differently.
they all do. So I'm really just sort of jumping around here with my brush, and it's nice to sort of disperse the color as I'm going along here. And right now I've got yellow, so I'm still kind of just popping color in here where I want it to go. And some of my leaves are pretty transparent. So, you know, when I think this is more opaque,
Yes.
this paint, and it sort of has a nice little covering power over some of the green that I've done here. So I'm just having fun filling in some of my flowers with a little yellow here and there. And I could make a bit of orange by taking my yellow and putting a little bit of red in there. Get a little orange. And that's kind of fun to add to. I'm also defining some of these flowers as well. What I'm going to do next is I might go back to green. I could also mix my blue and green together, which is kind of what I'm thinking for mine. I just think that it would be really pretty. And I'm going to sort of make some connections here.
Like a vine or something?
A bit of a vine,
Okay.
yeah, but I don't want it to overtake this whole thing. So I'm just going to pop a few little dark areas in here that are sort of going behind, or what's a better word, Larry? Connecting these together, but I don't want to lose what I've painted here. So I'm just.
And it looks like you're following kind of your circle too.
I'm following the circle, but then in a minute I'm going to get out of
the circle.
I'm going to go out of the circle, and that's going to be kind of fun. So I'm just getting a few darks in here and to sort of connect these shapes. What I'm going to do now is, for me, the fun part. This is when I think about doodling, and I think about just having fun with this. I've got yellow. I'm back with yellow, and I'm going to do just some curlicues, I guess, is a way to describe swirls that are going to just be sort of fun. And I'm drawing with my brush. It's loaded up with this juicy yellow color here. And you could really, I'm going to switch it over to the
lighter
lemon yellow. So really, you could do this with any color. I could even add a bit of green, light green to this. So I'm thinking of the wispiness of vines and I don't know another word. And I'm just going to start here and
little leaves almost.
Yeah, they're just little swirly things that I'm creating here as I'm going along. Now this is totally optional.
You're going inside the circle and outside the circle.
Yeah, I'm going around and just making some fun little swirls. So think of a curlicue that goes from the outside in, or perhaps you want to make some that go from the inside out.
Yeah.
And they can just be different sizes. It's really just some curves that are happening. And I'm using the tip of my brush and just making some marks. So this kind of just gives it a little bit of whimsy, I would say.
As I'm watching MaryLeah do this, I notice sometimes she's got such a light touch that sometimes her brush doesn't even hit the paper. That's how it's just very barely there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just touch. It's very, very light. So that kind of gives it a little bit of just fun, swirliness, springtime.
Yes.
Cheerfulness. So, and you can kind of look at yours and see maybe what does it need. Maybe it needs a little more oomph here and there. So you can just go in with the colors that you need to use to emphasize certain areas. Okay, so this is not a detailed project, but again, it's just fun and
And then, like you said, MaryLeah, you know, when you're done with this part, you can always decide to add a dragonfly or
Oh, yeah.
something in the center.
yeah, and you can just think about your brush and the way that it's shaped.
It's a leaf almost.
It's really
petal.
just a leaf, and I'm taking my brush and almost printing with it. So it's loaded with orange, and I'm just plopping it actually right down there. I've got a nice little
Yeah,
a nice
tip to
little
it.
leaf that
Yeah.
way. As it dries, you can always go back and add more to it, or you can just leave it and make another one.